location alone, there are inferior films. Films.
Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Sequels suck.
Welcome back, movie fans. This is the podcast Sequel Suck, and this is a movie that I'm really excited to talk about with another hardcore fan of this franchise, Angus Brown. We're talking Ghostbusters, and this will be the first first Ghostbusters film we will be talking about on this podcast. But we actually met talking about Ghostbusters 2 on Chatflix, and so we have to talk about the new Ghostbusters film, don't we?
Which it's our origin story. If people want to go check that episode out, it's a lot of fun because I think we both agree it's a pretty sweet movie. And here we are now. We're at number 5. This is the 5th Ghostbuster, which I've said a few times out loud, and still I can't quite get my head around because it just doesn't feel like there's 5 Ghostbusters movies. And I think, and this is something we'll get into today, but I think it's because there's been a real disjointed continuity that's gone on with this. We had the original 2, we had that massive gap. I struggle to call it a remake. I'm going to say we had an alternate reality Ghostbusters because the comic books picked up that storyline and really did something great with it. And then we had another huge gap, and now we've got direct sequels happening to the original 2, and these last 2 have come out in quick succession. But look, I think this is a great jumping off point for talking about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. You're a bigger Ghostbusters fan than I am. Does this feel like a Ghostbusters movie to you, or does this feel like a Ghostbusters fan film that got the original cast to guest star? What's your vibe on it?
Oh, that's an interesting take. I will just say that without going into in-depth conversation with the other part of the crew that was that are the Victorian Ghostbusters and the people that were there in attendance on premiere. We got a premiere screening the night before it got officially released. That you're at, Angus.
Thank you very much to whoever gave us those tickets. I've forgotten their name, but thank you.
Yeah, sadly, well, it's part of the Victorian Ghostbusters. So sadly, this time compared to Afterlife, I think there was a whole bunch of us. 15 of us officially. This time, due to different things and work-life balance and everything like that, there wasn't as many of us that could attend the premiere, but it was still a lot of fun. But I think the consensus was, in the small discussion we had after the film over a beer, that this movie was a lot of fun. And I don't think there was any negative vibes. I don't think no one said anything to me that was remotely negative. I think there was things we thought they could fix a little bit, but I think overall the consensus was, 2 thumbs up sort of stuff. So it's an interesting question you ponder, and maybe as we talk through it, I'll probably come up with a better answer, because I do feel like this one, compared to Afterlife, they really leaned into the nostalgia. Obviously, we go back to the Firehouse. We get to see Slimer again. They bring back the little marshmallow men, the Stay Puft, and that's not really central to the storyline, but they're there. We bring, like you said, they bring back all the legacy characters. Everyone's back apart from Rick Moranis, who played Lewis Tully, but he's sort of been out of the acting game for a fair while. But pretty much everyone's back. Ecto-1's there again. And then they obviously bring back all the new characters that they gave us in Afterlife. So, it was just melding of these characters. And there was a couple of interesting new characters as well, but I guess we'll sift through that as we go along.
I think it's probably a good point to point out to listeners that we have refrained from talking about this movie at all since we saw it. So this episode is the first time that we've discussed our personal feelings about Frozen Empire since we saw the film together. Yeah. I am surprised
can I just say,
delighted,
also,
honestly, at your response.
Can I just say that before anyone goes any further, if you haven't seen Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, it is out at cinemas right now. This will be a spoiler.
From top to bottom.
Well, there's spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, do not go any further. Come back to listen to us after you've seen the movie, if you haven't already seen it. But yes,
we are going to talk about every aspect. I'm surprised and delighted about your response to the movie because I had a very different response to the movie, and I think it is borderline unwatchable. I think it is a terrible film. Now, I'll clarify what I mean by that. I think that the actors are fantastic. I think every actor in this movie is doing an incredible job, and I loved watching all of them. I think that this film it's either like to me, it feels like it's five drafts too few or five drafts too many. Because there are something like 11 Ghostbusters in this movie, and
Yeah.
we don't get to spend any time with any of them,
Yeah.
including like the mum character from the last movie is in this movie. She doesn't do a damn thing. She basically sits in the passenger seat and then stands in the kitchen for a scene, and that's it. She barely talks. She's not there. Paul Rudd is essentially sidelined for this whole movie except for one, what I found to be excruciating scene where he just recites the lyrics to the song Ghostbusters to the wife.
Yeah.
That didn't work for me at all. There's new characters that are great that we don't learn anything about. James Acaster, who is a British comedian that I love, who bears a striking resemblance to the cartoon version of Egon
Yeah.
in this movie, which I thought was great. He's in this movie as a new character. He gets to do nothing. He gets like two scenes and then we never see him. And then he shows up at the end, but you don't know if he's actually there. Like it's four movies worth of stuff crammed into one movie, and none of it is really thought out enough, in my opinion. It's also very strangely shot. I found a lot of times I was watching it, I didn't know where I was supposed to be looking in the shot. Like the cinematography of it is quite all over the place. And I was watching it in the cinema, so on the big screen, like it is intended to be shown in the exact setup that the studio wanted the audience to see it, because this was a studio preview. And I was still like, I don't know where I should look in this shot. But the number one thing that blew me away about this movie is they bring back Peck. They get William Atherton back. He plays Peck. And from my point of view, he's the good guy in this movie. He's the only one who makes any sense, because there is a 15-year-old girl who's a part of the Ghostbusters who, I don't know why she's a Ghostbuster. And he says, what the hell is a child doing going out and being a Ghostbuster? She can't do that. That's illegal for so many reasons. And the audience is meant to go, boo. But I was standing there going, yes, you made him right. Why did you do that? Why did you make Peck correct?
Yeah.
You absolute maniacs. So
Well,
it's
funny you bring that up too, because I do think it was very disjointed because they've got too many characters. But like you said, the Walter Peck character, which the irony being that a lot of people over the years have gone back and go, yeah, Walter Peck's kind of the villain of the piece of the first movie. But when you pare it all back and really look at it, he should be the hero of the first Ghostbusters movie, because he's actually right from an environmental standpoint. The Ghostbusters and everything that they're involved in doesn't meet standards. So it's kind of funny. It's like you said.
Well, he's kind of...
Well, they've brought him back.
I always thought Peck was kind of like the mayor in Jaws. That's like
yeah.
Is he a bad guy? Not necessarily. Is he the bad guy of this story? Yes, because we are on the side of the heroes and we want him to go away.
Yeah.
But what the mayor in Jaws is trying to do is save the town. What Peck is trying to do is like, ecologically, this could be a disaster.
Yeah.
Now, he has no dick, so we have to just.
But you're right. I feel like they brought Walter Peck back, and kind of like you're saying, they kind of make him the hero and kind of almost lean.
He's the mayor, by the way, in this one. He's the mayor now. I don't know how he got elected, but he's the mayor of New York. And he looks like Rudy Giuliani on purpose. It's very funny.
I do feel like it was almost like they knew that, there's this fan base that go, oh, well, maybe Walter Peck wasn't as bad as we actually thought, or what we're led to believe. And then, like you said, they kind of almost have him have that hero moment that he questions, okay, the Ghostbusters, I don't agree with it, but you've got this 15-year-old with a, nuclear accelerator on her back, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. And he's making valid points that they're breaking so many laws and they've done this damage. And yet you kind of meant to boo him and think he's an asshole. And I'm like, well, but that's how things are. That's the law. Like, that's just a lot of it's just common sense, I think, anyway. But it's a weird way to bring him back. Because I don't know if anyway, it's just like this. We've got to have him back and be the villain again. And I was like, I don't know if that really works, but yeah.
there's a few things where that happens. Like you talked about, we get to see Slimer again,
Mm.
but having Slimer in this movie basically it sidelines Finn Wolfhard's character
Mm,
because
mm.
now his whole thing in this movie is he's going up to the attic to try and catch Slimer and failing every time, and that's really all he does in this movie.
Yeah.
Is he goes to the attic to try and we don't get an explanation as to why Slimer is living in the firehouse now. We get something that I thought was quite bizarre where they talk about like the problem with the storage
Mm.
of the ghost, which is a great point. Like, have you just been storing ghosts down here for 30 plus years? What the hell? But we were told in the previous movie that it was a Starbucks for a while. So did they just like leave the basement full of ghosts and no one went down there? What was because they didn't own the firehouse for the entirety of the gap between movies. So that was a strange thing where I was like, hang on, did no one think to check this?
No, well, I don't think it was ever really a Starbucks. I think that's what Ray thought, or again, I don't know if that was supposed to be a joke, but I agree with you that there are some issues with the continuity with the original two films, which we finally got a reference to the second one, sort of. I mean, I know we had the bookstore in
goodness.
Afterlife, but the fact that they referenced the Statue of Liberty in the flashback was kind of cool. But I do think there's like you said, the containment unit, and yeah, there's definitely some continuity problems there because, you know, they kind of between Ghostbusters 1 and 2 are shut down. And then, so they're not trapping no ghosts there, but the ghosts, I'm assuming. I'm so confused because really, I'm not sure how the containment unit could be that full, to be totally honest. Because remember, there's a lot of ghosts that kind of escaped in the first movie.
Well,
and they aren't collecting them all in what, you know, in the next couple of weeks. They're getting shut down by Walter Peck and all the bigwigs leading into Ghostbusters 2. So I'm assuming after Ghostbusters 2 they did a lot of collecting of ghosts. But again, Afterlife kind of sets up this thing that they're kind of not in existence, and it was 30 years ago that there was this Ghostbusters craze. I don't know. There's definitely some continuity issues there with the containment unit, I think, as well. To be a little bit picky, but
I mean that, and also, so they have the containment unit that they know in this movie is an issue.
Yep.
What they also have that we learn is that there is an entirely new Ghostbusters facility filled with, I guess, in this universe, qualified people who are genius scientists experimenting with all this stuff, and yet this family, which is that what they are, two kids and two parents, are left to essentially be the Ghostbusters, but they have no awareness whatsoever that there is this other unit. So they know that they have basically untrained, unqualified people running around being the Ghostbusters, and they do nothing to help them. They don't give them any of the new equipment that they're building. They don't give them any knowledge of the fact that there is a whole nother team of Ghostbusters there to help them. They just leave this family in the firehouse and they're like, well, I guess you're Egon's daughter. So I guess maybe it's a family business and we don't really care. We're just, if you die, you die. What's that? A 15-year-old is a Ghostbuster? I don't really care. Also, why are all these kids working these jobs? Like, all these kids, like Lucky is just working at the other Ghostbusters facility. The other podcast, who doesn't have a podcast anymore, is just working with Ray. Like
YouTube video.
These are children. They're children, and no one seems to give a shit that they're out there doing these horrifically dangerous things. It baffled me that was the way that they chose to pursue this story. You know, because if they're going to have that many Ghostbusters, they're the least interesting characters.
It's funny. Because I think you and me had this conversation before this movie was even made and talking about what they would do after Afterlife, and kind of like, well, we understand they've set up the family, you know, the heritage of Spengler and all that. So, you know, push comes to shove, they're probably going to be involved. But I agree with you. I think they've set up these younger characters, and I'm like, but you're painting yourself into a corner where they are children. Where can they go and have, like, for it to be believable, but also them possibly being Ghostbusters? How could they officially be a Ghostbuster if they're not of age? And that's where obviously that issue with Phoebe comes into this movie. But it was kind of like, I agree. It's like, you know, Finn's character Trevor is pretty young. I think he's just said he's 18 in the film. Lucky's quite young, about maybe almost at 18 as well. Podcast as a kid, Phoebe as a kid. I sort of this is the problem with Afterlife, is that it has a good setup, or I think Afterlife's a good film, but it kind of leaves them in a weird gap for this movie, because you have Gary, you have the mum, like you said, who doesn't really do a lot in this film, and then
It's
the parent.
embarrassing
It's almost
what
like
they give
it's
her.
like literally a family. It's the parent unit with a couple of kids, and they're running around chasing ghosts, and I'm like, yeah, is that believable, and is it realistic? And is it like you said, it's this weird thing
Is it
of,
interesting? It's not even interesting.
yeah, and then I agree with you. I think, and this is nothing against Lucky or podcast, and it's a bit sad because it's going to probably sound. Don't want this to make this a race thing, but you've got an African American actress, you've got an Asian actor, and you've got to have a certain diversity, especially in Hollywood film now. So I don't want to sideline or delete them, but their characters are not important in this storyline. There's too many characters. So
There's too
it's
many
like,
characters across the board.
yeah, I agree. So, like you said, the guy that played, the Pommy comedian that came in didn't have a lot to do, but he was
Yeah,
one of
James
the
A.
main characters.
Caster.
But again,
Yeah.
unfortunately, he's white, so it's like maybe that was where they kind of go, well, we won't bring back Lucky, but we'll bring back, a black comedian, or we'll bring someone else that brings something to make sure we're ticking the right boxes. But I feel like there was just too many characters and not enough, like you said, like things for them to do. So they were finding it hard, and like Trevor to be sidelined to have his subplot of the Slimer thing. I'm like, that's just taking him away from doing what. And then we've got Phoebe doing her own thing with the ghost. It was like all these characters getting pulled away doing different things and coming back to at the end, but it was just too much. They needed to streamline it and either sideline some characters, delete some characters, have maybe 3 side plots that come together or intertwine or something. But yeah, it was like the only thing we did touch on, I felt like it was almost like a real live action version of the cartoon, the real Ghostbusters.
Yes, it felt like it was taking from the cartoons and the comic books more than the original films.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're right. It's almost like they've tried to try to cram in 3 movies into one, or at least two movies worth of stuff into one. And then even when they did that, I felt like the end was just so quickly over. The third act with the villain was kind of like just very quickly dispensed with, and I was like, oh,
it was so
that's it.
small too. Like it
Yeah.
all took place in the firehouse. There was all of these Ghostbusters in the firehouse. I didn't know where any of them were in like the geography of the building. I just knew that the bad guy was there. They were all in the one place. Bill Murray literally shows up out of nowhere and is just like, "Can I be of help?" And like, "I'm so happy that you're here because I need you in this movie, but I cannot believe this is how they're utilizing Bill Murray agreeing to come back for his 4th Ghostbusters movie after decades of being like, sorry, 5th. He's 5th.
Yeah.
He's been in every one. You're right. He's coming out for his 5th Ghostbusters movie after saying for decades, I will never do another one. And you got him back a 5th time, and this is what you do, which is exactly what he was always afraid of. Is like that if we do it again, we're just diluting something further. What I am baffled about, they have all these great characters, they have all these great actors. What I don't understand is why they didn't make the decision to do something like, all right, so Winston clearly is back in the game. He's funding the research. He's bought the firehouse. He's the money man. Why aren't the new Ghostbusters, like James A. Caster and the researchers, even Paul Rudd, like he's a science guy and he's an adult.
Yeah.
Why aren't they the Ghostbusters when we start the movie? So you have a new team of Ghostbusters plus Paul Rudd. Then you have the mum and Finn Wolfhard and the daughter who are like, we help save the world too. Like, why are we sidelined? Then you actually have a family drama going on because they're like, well, Gary, why do you get to go do this and why don't we? And or maybe Finn Wolfhard is allowed to come along because he's 18, but the daughter isn't. And that creates some sort of friction there. And that explains why she goes off and does a whole thing. And then you can establish these characters. You can actually give them something to do. Have like Bill Murray, have him there as a mentor character, like essentially have him being I don't know, the man in the chair. He's like, I don't go out and fight them anymore, but I'll be like your boss. I'll be the manager,
Mm.
and I'll get paid a lot of money by Winston to do it. And give like no one had a job in this movie. They were just kind of Ghostbusters that ran around. It just it made no sense to have all the pieces there and then just kind of shake them up and throw them in front of the screen and be like, I
Yeah.
don't know, ghosts.
Well,
Like even little things like the start, they're like, there's the Chinese ghost dragon of the 64th Street sewer or whatever it was. What are you talking about? Why are you acting like that's a thing that everybody knows? There's dragon ghosts now. Does that mean there's dragons in this
Yeah.
universe? Because if there's a ghost, it must have been a real thing at one point. Like
Yeah.
you're just throwing shit in there that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think even it made sense from Afterlife that Podcast and Ray Stantz would be doing something together, possibly.
Fun little side bit.
But
little side bit.
It was, but even then, it's kind of like you've got Ray kind of running around doing his own thing too. Like you said, it just felt very disjointed. Like they were trying hard to give everyone a piece of the pie and trying to facilitate every character, give them some importance. But sometimes you just go, you can't have them all. You've got to make some hard decisions, and I do wonder if they should have gone harder with, like, even so. Patton Oswalt played the other character in the library, and another great actor, but he had a really small part. He probably would have been filmed in 2 or 3 days. But again, it's like, but did you need that character? I just wonder.
Ray could have done that. That's a Ray Stantz scene.
Exactly, and I felt like
don't need a new character.
Well, I feel like Egon and Ray were in those first 2 movies. They were the guys, the researchers that knew the history, and I just thought it was weird that it was like Ray had to go to another person that would find this, and I'm like, well, couldn't Ray have done that? And the kids, even podcasts, being on the internet searching and whatever.
Perfect.
I don't know, and that was the thing. Like, I love the nostalgia of the library, but like, one, did we have to really go back there? Then we had the same guy that comes out that we're there. Oh, you're not supposed to be within 50 feet of this building. And then we had the ghost again in there, and it was kind of like,
they caught that ghost. That ghost. Why is that ghost there?
Or did they officially catch that ghost?
Maybe they ran. Why is it there on the one day that Ray comes?
Oh no, she's always there. She lives there. She's just part of the
it
furniture.
Just felt like they were out of ideas.
Yeah. No, well, I just think they whether it was a fan service or nudge, wink, wink, they crammed way too much of that stuff in, and I don't know. I mean,
little things like they have new ways to use the equipment. They have a little remote control car. They have a drone. Like stuff like that, great. Innovation makes sense. The original Ghostbusters were innovators, makes sense the new ones would. But rather than watching young people who know how to operate remote control cars and drones doing it, it would have been so much more interesting to have Ray or Winston in the car at that point and have them trying to operate it, or have even Gary, for God's sake, like have someone trying to operate it and then them having no idea what they're doing. Like, something that was really sorely lacking in this movie, and it was highlighted anytime Bill Murray was on screen, was the freedom to be funny. Bill Murray obviously rewrote every scene he was in to just suit whatever he felt like saying on the day, because when he was there, he was so relaxed, he was comfortable, and he was funny as hell every time he was there. Almost every other joke, except for, and this is one actor we haven't spoken about yet, who was quite a big part of the plot, and I thought was great, Kamal Nanjiani, who plays the grandson of the keeper of the sphere that holds it was a very convoluted backstory for the boss, but he essentially plays like this hapless dipshit. Yeah, the Fire Master. He plays this hapless dipshit who turns out to be quite important. He was very funny, and he knew what he was doing in every scene he was in. But this movie lacked all of the comedy of the originals. In fact, my number one note, when I got home after watching it and I was writing notes for this, the first thing I wrote was, this movie needs someone in the studio to hire a suite at the Plaza for Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and Reitman if he wants to be there, and they need to give them a half a kilo of cocaine and let them write this story the way the originals were done. Because the number one thing missing from this movie is cocaine. If you just let the writers get messed up on cocaine and come up with crazy ghost busting shit, You would have had incredible, and then just give Bill Murray a bunch of cocaine and be like, man, go to work, show us Ghostbusting. And him and Dan Aykroyd just having scenes together, high as kites like they did in the 80s, busting out incredible humor. And if one of their hearts explodes on set, well, what a way to go, and what an advertising campaign. It's like, this movie is so good, Bill Murray's heart exploded making it. Everyone would go and see it. It would be the greatest movie of all time. Everyone, there's no, like, it's written by committee. There's no spontaneity in this movie. There's no creative idea that obviously someone at 3 a.m. in a writer's room with their best friend has gone, oh my God, and then what if we do this? Wouldn't this be so cool? Like, the original Ghostbusters would have been those guys sitting around being like, oh my God, what if there's like just this fat green like ghost that just keeps sliming Bill? Like, every time they see him, he just like covers him in shit. And just like Bill gets progressively more pissed off and like, oh fuck, I can see it. There's going to be so, write it in. Let's do it. Let's do it. This was all like, what if we take that thing from number one? What if we talk about that thing in number two? What if we take that thing from the comic? What if we add in 7 more characters? And it's just a bunch of people obviously sitting around treating it like math. Like, there was no joy jumping off the screen in this movie, which is hard to watch in a Ghostbusters movie. Even Afterlife, like that ending in Afterlife, when the ghost of Egon comes back, got me hard. Yeah. So hard. I was tearing up. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is incredible. This is an inspired idea. I feel so much joy right now. I can't believe I'm watching Egon on screen again. Ghostbusters is back, baby. And this time I was like, what am I watching? Why is this here? This is just a bunch of people in suits going, hey, we need to make X amount of dollars this quarter. Let's churn out a Ghostbusters movie. That's guaranteed to earn some dollars. Like, it just felt heartless. It was really, it really bummed me out.
Yeah, okay. I'm really sad to hear that, because, I mean, you know, having these conversations now, I definitely can see it was definitely not a perfect film by any stretch, but I was entertained. I had fun with it, but yeah,
I'm glad. I mean, I hope it's just me. I hope most people love this movie.
I do feel, well, I mean, the critics tore it to shreds, but I feel like the last time I checked, the audience score was pretty decent.
I mean, it's making money.
Yeah, well, that's
Ghostbusters. As of recording, Ghostbusters is now $1 billion franchise.
Yeah,
this movie's pushed it over the top. So
yeah,
you know.
Well, the crazy thing is, most of the things you brought up are quite legitimate, and definitely reasons for, they're having issues, like whether it was, like you said, maybe too many chiefs, not enough Indians, or too many yes men, I don't know, or too many great ideas that they just wanted to cram in, or subplots or whatever. Like, again, they could have done without Slimer. I know, I love it, and I think they were trying too hard to do the real Ghostbusters, where Slimer does become the Firehouse pet, and is the one ghost that sort of joins them on these adventures. And that's what that felt like. And while it was sort of funny, I think it was definitely unnecessary. And like you said, then it sidelined Trevor as a character. He's got this whole subplot. Don't start me on what happened with him and Lucky. Weren't they supposed to be sort of romantically inclined
they got one
Afterlife?
Scene together, and it was
but then, even then, it's like, it's not like this movie was in 1984 where you have to call someone and there's no mobile phones. She literally was in New York at this other facility as a Ghostbuster, and he didn't know about it. There was no community. I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, unless
you can't tell me that both of them aren't constantly posting on social media. Like, look at what I did today, and they're posting photos of them with ghosts.
Oh, 100%. Well, no, but even if she wasn't, even if they didn't have a big social media presence, if they are friends and they come from Oklahoma or wherever the hell in the Midwest they were from, and they're all in New York, as if they're not catching up or at least having a WhatsApp chat to know what each other's doing. I felt like that was weird, because that was another thing that I felt was way too contrived. Okay, yes, Gary and the family move to the Firehouse. They want to do the Ghostbusting thing. They think that's their legacy. Makes sense. The kids are going to go with mum, right? Tick. But Lucky is from the Midwest. There's no reason, unless he's getting a job with Winston and the Ghostbusters, is she in New York? And then alternatively, same thing, podcast. All of a sudden, he's supposed to be at space camp, his parents believe, but he's in New York at Razor Colt's bookshop doing a YouTube video series. Like, I just thought, and that was what I was thinking coming out of Afterlife. Don't tell me they're going to come up with this contrived version of events for all of them to be in New York City to fight the next big villain. And I was kind of, that's where they had to have a better reason for. I just thought it was pretty weak. maybe lazy writing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seemed a bit. And then the other character we haven't talked about. Now, this is for me, was the big thing I didn't like was the female ghost, who, funnily enough, is in a movie we talked about recently, Doctor Sleep. She played, what do we call
She
it?
played Snakebite Annie.
Snakebite Annie.
Mhm.
I have major issues with this. And my issue
I
is, and I know someone, I spoke to someone and they said, what was with the lesbian thing with Phoebe and the ghost? And I said, oh, okay, so you saw it. So a few people had sort of seen, I'm like, was this supposed to be a romantic sort of thing, or at least Phoebe had a connection with her romantically? I don't have any issue. If Phoebe is going to be in the next few films a lesbian character, I actually have no issues with that. The person I spoke to kind of sounded like they had issues with it. But my issue was, now apparently that actress, her name just escapes me, is apparently about 21 or 22 years old, but she has a look that she looks older, and significantly when you put her alongside Phoebe, looks like quite a bit older. To me, she's just got a type of face that I don't think that relationship looked really good on screen. I feel like it looked a bit creepy on screen. And if that's what they were going for with this maybe potential love interest, I think they picked the wrong actress. But that's just my opinion. I just thought
I think
they probably needed a girl that looked maybe like she was 15 or 16, that really fit with Phoebe and didn't look like someone that was prom queen 10 years ago. You know, like it just, I don't know, it just didn't feel right to me. And that's nothing against that actress. I just think they maybe picked the wrong one to be that role.
Yeah, and I think that I really liked that idea. I think that's a great idea they had mixed in. I think it was poorly executed because they didn't flesh anything out properly in this. But I think the idea of Phoebe being kicked out of the Ghostbusters, and then the person that she finds that she connects with and has an attraction to and a connection with is a ghost, great concept. Like, let's do it. I think that, so Emily Allen Lind is the actor's name. Funnily enough, IMDb does not have the year of her birth.
Yes, I thought that was weird too, and I was like, do I not have it because I don't have IMDb Pro? But I believe somewhere else I found, I think she's supposed to be 21. She's the middle
She's
child.
21 years age.
Yeah.
She's 21 years of age. I've just found out. But the thing about, like, regardless of because they do look, whether or not in real life they are different in age, they look like they're different age. So it felt a bit off just having someone significantly older, but that kind of works because you have the idea that she's manipulating Phoebe. So I didn't dislike that. What I struggled with is that she was meant to have died in like the 50s or something, and she looks like she was born like with a TikTok account. Like, she doesn't look like she's from the 50s.
Yes. Yeah.
This person's face is a 2020s face.
Yeah. So did you catch it? So when I first saw it the first time, I wasn't too sure. I didn't catch the age, but she actually does say, when I saw it the second time, she does say she's 16. So I'm like, I know we see some, we see rom-coms and those teen films where there's people that are 20, 21 playing high school kids and whatever. But some of them have a look where they kind of look like Jim in American Pie looks, I don't even think he was that much older, but he has that look. He looks like he could be a high school kid. He looks like the guy we went to high school with, Whereas this girl, and again, it's nothing. It's not her fault. I just think she's got a look that she could maybe play the last year of high school, or she could easily be 27 in a film.
Yes.
And I just think that's where it was like, I feel like, and this is the thing, and maybe I'm overthinking it, and maybe I'm being extra critical, but I feel like if that was two male characters, I think people would have issues with it. Or if it was older male ghost, or a male ghost and a female character, I think people would be creeped out by it. So it's like, well, why is it any different if it's two female characters and one Phoebe is made to look 15, and I can't even remember. I don't even know what McKenna Grace's age is right now, but she's still pretty
17.
young.
She's 17.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But they make her look good to be 15, and we believe that she's 15.
Yeah, and they also go out of their way to make her look young, and they treat her like she's a child in the movie. Like, a big part of the plot of the film is that she is a child. So the casting, it's more than anything else, I just found it distracting.
Yeah.
I was watching the Ghost. I'm like, I love this storyline. I love this plot point. I think this is a great idea to put in the movie. I think they mishandled how they kicked Phoebe out of the Ghostbusters. Like I said, I think it should have started with her not being allowed to be in and her having that disconnect. I think the casting, it's an odd casting choice that's really distracting. I also, larger than anything else, I have a problem with the fact that, like, purely because it suits the storyline, this ghost looks like a regular person, but every other ghost in the movie looks like a cartoon monster ghost.
Yeah.
No one else is dying and retaining their natural life beauty. And they do have the line, she's like, oh, I died before the flames got to me. It's like, great. I'm glad you addressed the fact that she looks great. But even so, every other ghost in this movie is a dragon or Slimer or a horned beast or some kind of hideous monster. Like, or for some reason, a ghost that has no form and can only be seen when it possesses items, inanimate objects, which is it feels like one of those things when you pitch it, it's a great idea, but then when you like play it in the reality of the world of Ghostbusters, which is just an absurd sentence to say out loud. I know what I'm saying. I know we're talking about a movie called Ghostbusters about people who hunt ghosts, but if you're gonna make a movie, you got to follow the film's internal logic, and that didn't. And I feel like a lot of the ghost stuff was like, oh no, this just suits what we want to do. We don't care if this makes sense in the movie that we're making. We're gonna do that. So having this character be just this beautiful, ethereal looking young woman.
The only thing I can
no, she should be a friggin' ghost.
and look,
her jaw should fall off.
I'm sure this was addressed probably in the cartoon or a movie or somewhere along the line or one of the books. I think when we see them in an ugly form, like ugly little, slime or whatever, it's because that person was in their lifetime was an evil and bad, malicious person. Whereas someone like Egon turns up, it's because they turn up in their normal form because I guess effectively they've gone to heaven, they've been a good person or whatever. But you're right. I think they do seem to, at least in this film, pick and choose, how conveniently someone looks very, very evil and malicious and is about to slime you or rip your head off, and then other people seem to be okay.
I would love them to do more with that storyline and just play it out because they set a lot of important plot points up in there, and they do I think it's fantastic that they just really matter of factly made Phoebe a queer character. I think that's great. Like, it wasn't a big deal that it was her in love with a female ghost. It was just really, I love it when films do that. It doesn't, like, it's stupid in 2024 when they're like, oh my God, it's a ghost and a girl. Like, who gives a shit? Make her gay. Nobody cares. That's great. And put that in there. It's really, really great for young audiences. If they're pitching this to young audiences to see that, but you kind of half-assed that storyline. Like, if you're going to do something like that, you got to do it. You can't just be like, oh yeah, and it's a girl ghost. All right, anyway, now we're going to go over here. It's like, no. You chose an important topic and then you dumped it, and that's not cool.
I think it was from our table, I think it was Duncan that did say that he, with that subplot, did feel like, it was very short. From what we saw, it wasn't that many interactions before Phoebe was like really heavily, almost head over heels, or at least very attached to this ghost character very quickly. And it was kind of like, you've known this person for 5 minutes and it's already a big deal kind of thing. And I don't know.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with that. Like, she's 15 years old. When you're a teenager, you see someone and you never speak to them, but you're in love with them. I love that person's like, what are they like? Like, oh, I've never talked to them. I would never talk to them. That'd be terrifying. But I am in love with them. I'm going to marry them.
You definitely got a point there. And then she's been isolated from her, ghostbusting group, and
she doesn't seem to go to school or have friends, so it also makes sense. Like, the first person roughly her age that pays attention to her, she's like,
plays chess.
Love you. Yeah, and plays chess. That was I don't. It's New York City, and she's 15 years old. Why are her parents allowing her to just walk into Central Park in the middle? She's gonna get murdered by a not ghost. She's gonna become a ghost.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And that just reminded me of something that infuriated me. The machine that sucks ghosts out of things and they're like, "Oh, can you do it on living people and separate their soul from them?" Like, no, we can't do that. And then 3 scenes later, Phoebe, who has never touched this machine in her life, is like, "Oh, I know how I can separate my soul from my body for 2 minutes." Like somehow she's got it down to an exact science that she can time it, and she can become a ghost for a little bit. I was like, "Hang on, you this movie put a scene in itself that told us you can't do that, and
Well,
you somehow now can do it."
okay, only because I've got the beauty of a rewatch. Your mate, the comedian, he doesn't say it's impossible, but he says they're still playing around with it. Like it's not an exact science. It's definitely risky. Like they haven't got it down to that fine art. So for her to take that risk,
But when did she have a chance to even
play
tweak?
with it.
Like no one in human history has ever done this before. She sees this machine once, never touches it, and then is like, "I know how to do this thing that no one in human history has ever done before."
When she watched it the first time, she was really taking in how everything was working. So she absorbed
I must have missed how intently she was looking in
like
that
a sponge. She absorbed all that information, and she was able to do it to her. Yeah, I agree. There's definitely. Oh, you're making me get down on this film.
All right, well, look, let's talk about a positive then, because this is a big positive that I loved. Like I said, Kamal Nanjiani, who's a great comedian, a great actor, is in this film doing an incredible job. They play a character who becomes the Fire Master, and they are effectively playing the. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so you're going to hear me cough a lot this episode. They're essentially playing the Rick Moranis character now. That he's filling those shoes of being like the dweeby guy who is just not a part of this world, in over his head, wants nothing to do with it, and winds up becoming an integral part of the final defeat or victory of the villain, depending on how things go. And he really he owns this part so hard. When they're practicing all the fire stuff, when he's trying to figure out how to be the fire master, I was so glad that they put that in there and that they really let him have free reign. I wish that they had have done a bit more. Like I think about, or not. I just did a big cough if we don't edit it. I wish that they had have given him a bit more, like using Rick Moranis as from the original. We get a lot of scenes of his character to set him up as an interesting character, and then he becomes the gatekeeper or the key master. I can't remember which one he is.
He's the Fire Master.
No. Rick Moranis. Which one is he? Is he the gatekeeper or the key master?
No, he's the key master.
He's the key master and she's the gatekeeper?
Yes.
In any case, yeah. Like,
this is going to be bad because it's going to look bad if I've got that wrong.
And then in this one, like Kamal Nanjiani sells the sphere thing to Ray, and then we don't see him for ages, and it comes back and there's a secret room in the house. I just wish we had had him, I don't know, live in the same building as Ray, have there be a reason that he knows that Ray exists. And it's kind of similar to like Dana, he's around, you see him a bit, and then he sees Ray with some weird shit, and he's like, "What is that?" And he's like, "Oh, I run this occult bookstore or something." And he's like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Well," and then he pulls out all this weird occult shit. He's like, "What about this?" Just that it would have taken the same amount of screen time, but we could have had a reason for him to be a part of it. It would have been easier for them to find him when they need to find him. Because
I thought that was weird. How did they know how to find? How did they know how to find him?
New York City. It's so hard to find people.
Yeah, it's like, how did they find him when they chased him up later? I was like, there's no receipts. They're not keeping. He just paid him cash. He got out of there. Like, unless the box had the name written on it, possibly. The address. I was like, that's weird. And then this is one of the problems I do have with the film. I don't want to sound like a Karen because I like a good sexual innuendo joke or whatever. And obviously the first couple of movies have jokes, but they're not really in your face too much. But
I mean, Ray gets blown by a ghost. That's pretty
well, when you're a kid, you don't know until later. But I did have an issue where they're trying to make the Ghostbusters more family. And so I know some people, they're not kids' movies. I was like, yeah, well, maybe the first two weren't, but they've tried to lean into
Afterlife is a kids' movie.
Yeah.
Straight up kids' movie, and so is Frozen Empire.
And don't worry, Levi's like, can we watch Afterlife again? Like, he loves that movie. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was like, oh, can I take my kids to the Frozen Empire? Oh no, because they talk about a sex dungeon and them grandma having sex. I was like, really? Did we need to, like, I know it was funny, a bit of a laugh in the movie, and it makes sense because I feel like people would make those jokes in real life when they saw that room. But at the end of the day, it's like, come on, people, like, do you have to have that in there if you're trying to facilitate, you know, kids going to see this movie too? I just think really just
Well,
find another way to have the comedy, like, or have it go a little bit over the head, that parents don't have to explain stuff to kids. I just think
it's
yeah.
part of what I think makes, like, it speaks to the larger thing. This movie is quite confused as to what it's trying to be. Like, is it a family drama? Kind of, but not really. Is it a wacky comedy? It wants to be, but it's not really funny. Is it the building of a larger world for the Ghostbusters? It adds more Ghostbusters, but it does absolutely nothing to build a larger world. Like, we have an extra facility that has some extra equipment. That's really it. We got some new machines. There's no world building. There's no establishing of anything larger. You didn't set up any villains who could be an ongoing problem potentially. Like, you dealt with the big bad really quickly. Like, that big bad is barely in it, and when they show up, they get done away with in like minutes, in a very a simple, small way, despite them setting up immense and terrifying power. Like, everything that the film kind of says it's going to do, or wants to do, it doesn't do it, or it does something that counteracts it. And I think the humor is a part of that. Like, they obviously looked at the first one like, oh, we need to age this up a little bit. Like, the first one was a flat out G-rated kids movie. Let's get a bit more like edge. And then they do, but they, like you said, they put in jokes that for a lot of parents are going to be like, well, I can't take my 10-year-old to see this. Like, that's not age appropriate. So you're taking that out, but you're still making the majority of the main characters in this movie children. So you're going to have a lot of adults who are like, oh, I'm watching a kids movie. I feel like I shouldn't be watching this. I don't know. I feel weird. Like, it's very at odds with itself.
Well, I even thought it was a bit weird that it was Lucky and Trevor kind of making the jokes as well. It's like, well, I'm not saying they haven't, you know, lost their virginity and they're not playing around or whatever, but it did feel a little bit like, well, I don't know. I just thought if it was slightly older characters, I would have probably, or like say if it was Gary making a joke to the mum and they were there, or I kind of feel like that would be a bit more funny. Whereas I thought it was, I don't know. I just thought it was the young characters making the joke. Kind of felt like, I don't know. I just think it was all around awkward.
And you have like in-universe stuff that can course correct it. Like, if the younger characters start making like rude jokes, have Winston there to like smack them upside the head and be like, hey, like, Winston is the kind of character who would pull you in line if you start to talk dirty and he doesn't think you should.
Yeah.
That's in you. You can do that straight away. Like, he's a straight down the line kind of guy. He's not going to do it. You have Trevor, and you have I don't know. I can't remember James Acaster's name character, but you get Trevor, James Acaster, Bill Murray.
I think it was Pinfield or something. Pinfield.
Yeah, something. It was a good name. He was a great character. This is like his first big Hollywood movie. I really hope that he does more stuff because I thought he crushed it. But get them together, like, joking. You know, like, anytime Venkman talked, it was funny. Like, so you have that freedom to make him be a little bit more risque. He's the risque guy.
I was going to say,
Isn't that correct?
I
have
think
the mum. You've
yeah.
got a mum in the movie. Have her mum it out and be like, oi.
Yeah.
But no, she's too busy not doing anything in the movie.
She's doing the washing. We saw her washing the suit.
She literally does like, it's so tone deaf. This woman who in the first movie is established to be such a strong and independent character. Even in this one, like, when things turn to shit and Gary rocks up and she's packing the bags, like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm packing. I do it a lot. I'm good at it. Like, she reminds you that she is quite capable of taking care of herself and doing what needs to be done to look after her and her kids. But no, she's in the passenger seat of the car. She's in the kitchen. She's in the laundry. Like, she's really horrifically handled. Carrie Coon is a great actor too. She really didn't deserve this. Her and Paul Rudd were great in the first movie. They had excellent chemistry. They were really interesting to watch. Like, there was parts of Afterlife that I was like, I don't know about this. But overall, I thought it was good. And those two together, I was like, great casting. This time is like, what do you do? Why are they here? Why did you bother to pay them and bring them back if this is what you're going to do with their characters?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, do something. Kill someone or kidnap someone or blow something up, guys. Come on, like
Yeah.
put him in some peril. They're not. You're right. She's washing the suits. It's embarrassing.
Well, at least we know. Like, that was the one thing I did. Like, we got to see a lot more of the Firehouse. We kind of got to see a lot of the layout of how the Firehouse is, apart from just seeing it sort of sparingly in the first two films. We get to sort of see a bit more of the rooms. Yeah, it was like her walking down, talking to Gary, but she's got the basket full of their flight suits, about to chuck them in the wash, and yeah, it was just like, okay.
You're done. See you later. The director of this film is not Jason Reitman, which I didn't know when
it's
I
Gil
sat down to watch
Kenan.
it.
Yeah,
Gil Kenan.
Which he hasn't done a lot, has he? Though
he's done nothing. He's directed 6 things. His first film was the animated film Monster House.
Yes, I remember
which
that.
I think is great. I think that's an awesome movie. I love that. He did another kids film called City of Ember, which I haven't seen but has a bit of following. He did the Poltergeist remake, which
yes, I did it. Yeah,
that's a movie that when I finished watching it, I was physically angry, and I didn't know why. That movie was so bad. He directed an episode of the Scream TV series, so the boys representing.
How did we not know this?
Then he directed the Netflix movie A Boy Called Christmas, another family movie.
Yes,
which is, it's as a family movie, it's a good family movie. It's a nice, good time. And then he directed Frozen Empire. That's it. He also wrote Boy Called Christmas, and he co-wrote Afterlife, and he co-wrote Frozen Empire. That's his only writing credits. So his first ever writing credit was on Afterlife, and now he's been upgraded to director on this one. And this is a big job. I see how difficult it would be to take on a Ghostbusters movie. I see how many moving parts there are. I see that it is a tremendous job. I don't think that he was up to it necessarily. I think it's too much for a director who really has only directed essentially 2 live action movies before. And look, it's a
big deal. It's a big deal to step into those shoes, when you're dealing with a lot of CGI, a lot of green screen. You're recreating the Firehouse set in the UK.
They also did a lot of practical effects in this movie, which was nice.
Yeah.
But I think it's too big, and I think that's why, for example, in scenes like the Firehouse at the end, you have all of the characters essentially all at once showing up at the Firehouse, and you don't know where any of them are. You can't follow them in that bit. You're like, I have no idea where in the building these guys are, and I really should, because it seems important as an audience member that I would know what's going on, and things just nothing quite played out like it could in the hands of, I guess, a more seasoned pro. Or even if they got like a journeyman director, like someone who was just like a gun for hire, who knew how to run a big set, I think they would have been better off. And it's making movies is impossible. And you hear this all the time from people. Like, the fact that any movie gets made is just insane, because it's an impossible thing to do. You've got so many different people who have so many different ideas pulling in so many different directions. I do not think that this film capitalized on its
look, I don't want to smash him any more than we probably already. Not that we're smashing too much, but
I like him. I don't think he sucks.
He's inexperienced. I mean,
job.
I would consider with what he's done and sparingly films. Not that any of them are terrible films. It's a big step up to be doing a franchise film, like I said, special effects, a lot, at times toxic fan base, like a really parochial fan base. I don't know why Jason didn't do a follow-up. Obviously he was heavily involved in this still. I'm not sure what he was doing, why he didn't do it.
Well, he co-wrote this one and he produced this one, so he was still like deep in it.
Yeah. 100%. And but I agree. I do feel like, because I think years ago, Kevin Smith was offered something that was sort of, superhero-ish, and he knocked it back because he was like, mate, I'm Moratz, I'm Clerks, I'm chasing Amy. I don't know how to handle a $150 million film. Like, and I'm not saying this guy can't, but I was like, it's still a massive deal. Like, I don't know. Maybe there could have been someone better equipped to handle. But having said that, one of your gripes is too many characters. That comes at a writing stage too. So at some point
Well,
you
yeah,
go,
the
well,
writing is where this film falls apart,
yeah.
I think.
So it's kind of like, well, let's make some hard calls. Let's omit some characters or really, really cull the storyline back to make it really succinct and make sure we're shooting what we're going to shoot.
I don't even know what
Um,
the story of this movie is. Like thinking back, like what is like is it a story about uh Phoebe not knowing her place? Not really, kind of, a little bit. Is it a story about a family trying to establish their new dynamic? Because there is that little barely touched upon subplot of Gary trying to kind of be the dad, but knowing
yeah.
he's not the dad, but not being sure about how. Like they touch on it like twice in the movie, and then at the end treat it like it's a big deal when she calls him dad by mistake. And it's like she called me dad. She's like, I know. It's like, but you guys didn't really linger on that. So this isn't a family movie. It's not a reunion movie because the original Ghostbusters barely do anything. It's not a rebuild because they're not coming back. Like the last movie was the rebuild. The last movie was them coming back from the ashes. In this movie, Ghostbusters are back. They've got money. They've got the Firehouse. They've got the Ecto One. They've got resources. They've got community support. So they're not the Ghostbusters themselves aren't rallying against anything. They have nothing that they're opposing other than literal ghosts. Whereas in every other Ghostbusters movie, they are going against some other external force. You know, in the first movie, they're going up against Peck and ghosts, and then eventually Gozer. In the second movie, you know, they're shut down. In Afterlife, there has been no Ghostbusters for decades, and they're refinding what the Ghostbusters were and rebuilding this thing that everyone's forgotten about. So in every, and also in, you know, the side movie, the Paul Feige Ghostbusters Answer the Call, like they are building it from the ground up and trying to figure out how to do this thing. Like every other Ghostbusters movie, the Ghostbusters have a problem. This movie, they have no problem other than Phoebe's like, I want to be a Ghostbuster. And they're like, you're an actual child. It's insane and illegal and dangerous. You can barely lift the proton pack and you don't listen to us. Go to school, come back when you're 18. That's the only problem. No one else has a problem in this movie, which is probably why Trevor winds up in the basement fighting Simon, because they're like, shit, we don't like Gary and Carrie Coon, the mum, Carrie Coon. I can't remember her name because I don't think they actually say it in the movie, but like they don't have any. Callie and Gary have no friction. Callie. Yeah, so they have no friction. They're getting on great. The kids like him. They're getting on great. The original Ghostbusters are all pretty happy. Like they all have jobs and are content and doing their own thing. They're also quite happy to be friends again and go and fight ghosts again. Like there's no conflict in this movie. It's just, oh, a cold ghost is gonna show up, but we'll deal with him in 15 minutes. Like nothing. When at the very end, Peck is like, "I'm shutting you down," and they're like, "What's that? You love us?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I love us." It's like, yeah, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Like I think they forgot one of the core things that makes these movies good. And again, I know this sentence sounds stupid, but they ground the Ghostbusters movies in reality. They create real world problems.
Yes.
For the like Callie in Afterlife is broke as fuck and has 2 kids. That is a real problem that lots of people can relate to and be like, oh shit, yeah, paying bills is hard. And also, now you're going to find out that your legacy is a Ghostbuster. You know, the Ghostbusters in the first one, they talk about like Ray has to take an extra mortgage on his house to be able to buy like real shit that makes them real characters. And this one's like, they're Ghostbusters. All right, we're good. We don't need to do anything to flesh them out. We'll add new characters. They don't need backstories. They got the uniform. They're Ghostbusters. We good? All right, let's do it. Da, 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 da. Don't you feel good?
Yeah,
I feel like
the more we talk about it, I feel like there's like a movie that was in between that we missed. Like there was another movie that sort of set up a lot of the, Winston and the money and, oh, we're going to finance this and we're going to set this. Yeah, jump in the firehouse, knock yourselves out. Like I do feel
it would be fucking hard.
I feel like it's one of these situations where it's like almost like the Star Wars franchise now. Like, okay, we'll watch the movie. There's stuff you don't know, but you buy the book. We've written a book that ties the movies together and you get a bit more information. You'll have a greater appreciation of this film. And yeah, there is definitely a lot of unexplained stuff and stuff that really doesn't make a lot of sense coming after Afterlife.
You know what would be
Yeah.
really hard is a family moving from the middle of nowhere to the center of New York
Yes.
City,
Fish out of
not
water.
knowing anyone, living in a rundown, recently abandoned firehouse when nothing works properly. They have no friends, they have no community, their kids are isolated, and they are also trying to establish a new family dynamic because now there is this guy who's kind of stepdad, but was also their teacher, and they don't know how they feel. Does being a Ghostbuster pay any money? Because I feel like it never did before. Like there's a lot of stuff that we could have, like them arriving at the firehouse and moving in and figuring out how to live in a new city. Like, where is the scene where they get a call to go get a ghost and they're driving around New York and they're like, we have no idea where we are.
Yeah.
We have no idea how to get to
I agree. It's
Fifth and
not.
Main Street.
It's
We
not
don't
quite.
live in this city.
Yeah, it's not quite Crocodile Dundee, but
Like
it's
that would
still
have been
that
interesting.
very. It's not. It's still that fish out of water scenario where Crocodile Dundee's from the outback and not really from civilization. He goes to New York. Well, yeah, okay, they're civilized. They know about podcasts and mobile phones, but they're from this really, really small town, Midwest, and they're going to New York. And you're right. That would be a great little subplot. Is them finding a location for a ghost, or just even interacting with
And it would
that
give
new
you a great
world.
reason to get Venkman in the Ecto-1. We're like, we need a navigator. And you get Bill Murray leaning out the window
Or even
yelling at New
Winston.
Yorkers.
Right, yeah.
Even Winston, but I think like Winston's not
Yeah.
going to yell at people. Like Venkman leaning out the window yelling at New Yorkers as the siren, wheels down as they're going down one of the main streets in New York, and you've got New Yorkers being New York. I mean, there was New York.
We
was
should
a
have wrote
character
this
in
film.
movie. I honestly, and this is what I mean. Like, I feel like they did 5 too many drafts or 5 too few. It's in that middle spot. It was like you got too many ideas, but you didn't do enough with them. So either like go back 5 drafts before you had all these subplots, or go 5 more drafts and realize like the interesting thing. If you're going to make this movie centered around the legacy of the Spenglers, then center it around the Spenglers.
Yeah.
Have them be the core of everything. They're not. They are not the core of this movie. There is no core of this movie. Sometimes you follow Phoebe. Sometimes you follow Ray. Sometimes you follow the brand new Ghostbusters. Sometimes you follow a ghost. But you don't ever have a feeling as an audience that you are centered around one character or one group of characters that everything spirals out from. And you certainly, I think you nailed it when you said you feel like we're missing a movie. Like those characters moving to New York is an interesting and important part of this story. Why didn't we get any of that?
Yeah.
Like even for 10 minutes. I did not. I really. This is a personal thing. It's not the writers or the director's fault. This is just something I don't like. But it really frustrates me when you're watching a movie that is a few movies into a series, and the movie starts by going back in time to before the original film and setting up something to justify that story existing in the new one, which is what this does. It goes back to 1904, and then you watch a horse-drawn fire engine come out of the firehouse. Sure, it's cute.
Yeah.
It's cute, but it's like you have this whole thing to set up this big bad, but then 2 more times in the movie, we have really long dialogue scenes that set up the big bad. So we don't need that scene. We don't need to know that in 1904 he killed some people, because it turns out to be completely irrelevant because he's actually been around since like the Babylonian era or something. Like he's been around forever. That was just so we could see a horse-drawn fire truck come out of the firehouse and waste some time. Like, why wasn't the start of the movie the Spenglers showing up at the firehouse and being like, shit, like now we got to turn this place into a home. I got to enroll Phoebe in school. And while they're in the midst of trying to live their life, the phone rings and one of them picks it up, and then they go, and they put it down, and then they look around, and they're like, we got one. And then everyone's like, oh my God, we're off. And then you start the movie. Like, shit, man. Come on. Where's your heart?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, because I think the director's already come out and said, like, I think there wasn't a lot that hit the cutting room floor, and you know, apparently it was hard to
maybe
sew it. Well, that's the other point. But apparently, when the physical media comes out, there will be some deleted scenes, so people are already chomping at the bit to see that. But I don't know. I can't imagine that being of great value, or even if there was a director's cut. maybe if it helps fill in some blanks a little bit, but I still think there's always way too many characters. The only possible silver lining to all of that and all the negative things we have said tonight is that this is leading to setting up the franchise moving forward and possibly having alternate locations and or Ghostbusters uh, franchises within the US or even other countries. So personally, just off the top of my head, I'd love to see old school London kind of the UK have a Ghostbusters thing and they can look at some of their old ghost sort of stories and stuff like that. And then that could be, yeah, where a Pinfield and Lucky go across there and there's a couple of them. So you're not having everyone crammed into the one franchise. You can have them spread out and you can have one movie here and then in the next movie back in New York and it's Phoebe 18 now and whatever. I don't know.
Well, that's it. We are definitely getting another one. That is undoubtable at this point. Universal is onto a moneymaker and good. I'm glad. And I had a friend who came to watch this screening with me that we went to, and afterwards he was like, I hope everyone sees this movie because I want this movie to make a lot of money so they make another one.
Yeah.
That's my number one goal for this movie, is that they make the next one. And undoubtedly they are. And I'm excited for the next one. I think that there is never-ending promise in the Ghostbusters franchise. I'm baffled that we're at 5. It really, honestly, it's a franchise that does not feel like we are 5 in. It's good, I guess, because it doesn't feel tired yet.
Yeah.
But I hope that the next one really takes what they laid in this movie and jumps off in the right direction. Like, pick a couple of great characters and roll with them. Keep James Acaster's character. Phoebe will be 18. We can dump the whole idea like, oh, it's a kid, is it? No, she can just be a Ghostbuster. She's a genius. We've established that. It's fine. Please, 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 for the love of God, either can Callie be in or out? Like, make her a full-on freaking Ghostbuster, or have her be like, I don't want to fight ghosts anymore. It's messed up, and I'm not going to be a Ghostbuster.
Do you think that's one of the other problems with the film, that Callie, no disrespect, strong woman, but it was not necessarily her legacy. It was the granddaughter that has taken on the traits of her grandfather and being all sciencey and into that stuff and understanding everything. And Callie's not. So there's nothing wrong with that. But doesn't that make you think, well, she doesn't necessarily have to be a Ghostbuster? She could almost be the receptionist, or she could be back at the base. She doesn't have to physically be in the car or in a flight suit. That was the other thing. I was kind of like, well, they don't literally all have to suit up. I feel like Gary's 100% suiting up, and I think Trevor would too. And then I think Phoebe does too, but I'm like, I don't know if Callie has to. She doesn't have to be that character. Like you said, maybe she could be important.
An interesting story is Callie coming to terms with that. Yeah. Like, we know she had an estranged relationship with her father. She finds out he was a friggin' Ghostbuster. She wants to take up the mantle. Her kids want to take up the mantle. Her kids obviously love it and have a talent for it.
Yeah.
And what if the next movie, there's a storyline where it is Callie realizing, like, I want to be closer to my father, but I'm not good at this. I don't like it, and I'm not good at it. And the legacy isn't for me to carry on. It's for my kids. And her coming to terms with the fact that I need to step back from this. Like, have scenes where she's trying to catch a ghost and she just keeps fucking it up and the kids have to save her ass. And her realizing, like, this isn't my bag, baby. Like, I don't need to be a Ghostbuster. That's a friggin' interesting role for that actor and that character.
Yeah, I can be the accountant. I can do the money. I can pay, get the invoices.
Or I can go and do something that isn't Ghostbuster related at all. Like, I can go do something not this. I can be a writer and write about my experiences with ghosts. I can, start a podcast about ghostbusting without physically doing it. Like, anything. And it would be interesting seeing her realize that, because they've proven in this movie that she has nothing to do as a Ghostbuster or a character. So take that in the next movie and run with it, and have that be a thing, and have that be a point of conflict. Have some conflict in the movie where she starts to resent her children because they are good at it and she is not.
Mm,
And that just brings up all these suppressed emotions she has about her father abandoning her.
mm.
She's like, I can't even be a Ghostbuster like him because he didn't teach me, and you guys just naturally. And like, there's so much you could do with that storyline if you didn't have 11 other Ghostbusters who don't get to do
Yes,
anything that you're also trying to deal with. Make them
100%.
the core characters.
Mm,
Give me a story and then put ghosts in it.
mm. And I think maybe it is time. Like I think like I like Bill Murray. Don't get me wrong, and I think this was his better version in this film than Afterlife. I feel like
Oh, thank
I think it
God they
was.
gave him more to do in this.
Well, I think Afterlife he was there in, I guess in spirit, like because it was like how could he not be there? But I don't know. It was something about his performance in Afterlife. I felt like it was just phoning it in. I don't know, or maybe the lines he was given or what he came up with just wasn't funny. I don't know. I just didn't really like. I felt like it was a disappointment in Afterlife. But this one, like you said, like he didn't have a lot to do, but when he was there, he was just amazing on
They let him
screen and
cook.
funny. Yeah, and
It was great.
I still love, like, I know it's a bit more of an adult joke, but him just going up to the old box and just giving that nudge and, oh, my old whiskey bottle's still in there. And he's like, anyone for some
Right.
courage, liquid courage or whatever? I'm like,
Great. Classic Bill Murray, but also classic Venkman. Like that
yeah,
was beautiful. And you know what would have been beautiful is if his role in that movie was kind of being like the surrogate granddad to the kids. Like he
yeah,
knew their granddad. If he was just
yeah,
hanging around the firehouse telling stories about Egon,
yeah,
showing them stuff like the whiskey bottles on the walls, showing them the ropes around the firehouse, and again have that be a point of conflict where Carrie's like, you knew my father, I didn't know my father and you did, and you have all these great stories and I wasn't there for any of them, and my kids get to like live through you now.
yeah.
And then Bill Murray gets to do a lot in the movie. He doesn't have to do a lot physically because he's there just to be funny Bill Murray surrogate granddad.
But to play
Like,
devil's advocate, I don't know how many days he was coming to film. Like, I feel like
he could
he
have
was
shot his shit
probably,
out in 2 days, especially if it was all in the
ma-
firehouse.
maybe. Oh, I don't disagree, but maybe they had a small window with him. They can't rely on him. I know he's not the most reliable person at the best of times, so maybe like
He was
we
doing the
can't.
press junket though.
Yeah, he did.
Like,
Look, and I'll give him credit for that. I mean, he got on board, but I don't know. I feel like when it comes to filming, there's always been these stories that Bill, they're never sure if he's going to turn up, but he does somehow turn up, but he won't contact anyone. He'll just rock up. So I can imagine them being very tentative on maybe how much they put him in the film or how much availability he's going to have. But I agree with you. It would have been cool for him to maybe be the driver with the kids, and while he's driving, like I said, that's actually a good plot of him being almost the chauffeur because he knows New York, and like you said, yelling at pedestrians to get off the road and all that sort of stuff. It would have been funny him hitting the bike. Like, what the hell are these bikes? Like, just his sort of demeanor, but then also on some of these trips he can be telling funny stories about Egon to the kids and stuff like that. So
yeah, and like I said, like have him try and operate the drone, and being like, "What the hell is this?" And him just giving up, kicking the door open, grabbing out one of the old school boxes, sliding it out, and catching a ghost, and being like, "That's how it's like."
yeah,
Just so many opportunities to really let Venkman cook that they didn't run with, and like I said, I understand making movies impossible. There's a billion things that
but
we'll never know about.
do
When
we
into
think
making this
that's
movie,
the last
they didn't
hurrah?
even try.
Do you think that's the last hurrah for Venkman and that? I mean, I think we'll have
No,
Winston around, and I think Ray and Winston will be around because I think those guys love the friend to come back. It wouldn't surprise if we don't see Bill Murray again
it
in
wouldn't
Ghostbusters.
surprise me, but I feel like he's I feel like he went through a really cantankerous phase for a few years where he's like, I'm not doing any more Ghostbusters, and I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing that. I just want to play golf, and I'll make movies whenever I need money, and blah blah blah. I think he's kind of gotten over that a bit and embraced a bit more his legacy, and and understood as he's coming towards the end of his life, which is sad to say, but he is an older gentleman now.
Yeah,
Pardon me, and no one lives forever. I think he's looking back and being like, oh, I made Ghostbusters, and people in 2024 want to see me in a new Ghostbusters movie. Like, how many actors made movies in 1984 that can say that?
yeah,
Nobody wants to see Chevy Chase in another Fletch movie today. And I love Chevy Chase in the Fletch movies, but they're not making Fletch 3 with Chevy Chase and having people like, oh my God, Chevy Chase is back. They made a Fletch movie in 2022 with John Hamm and no one knew it came out.
yeah.
Like, there's so many actors who make so many things that are amazing and classic in the day, and they fade, or the entity becomes bigger than the individual. Like Star Wars, you don't need Luke Skywalker in Star Wars anymore. You've got infinite versions of Star Wars that don't have anymore. It's bigger than him. James Bond, they change James Bond every few years. They keep doing these franchises with different people or different things. It's really rare, especially with comedies, that you can make something and people still want to see the original dudes. And I think Murray has finally realized, holy shit, this is actually incredible. And I keep showing up for these things now, and people are genuinely delighted that I'm here and love me for it. And that feels good. So maybe I'll keep doing that, because I did those serious movies for a bit and people are like, that was really good. But no one is asking me to make On the Rocks 2. No one is saying, hey, when are we going to get another Rock the Casbah?
Yeah.
But people, I'm sure, on a daily basis are like, I would give a kidney to see you be Venkman in another Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be back. I think when they make the next one, I think he'll be back. I don't know how big his role will be. I hope it's bigger. I hope they just give him, give him a 3-minute scene where he gets to make up his own lines for the entire scene. And if that's the only thing he does in the movie, I don't care. But just let him cook. He did it in this movie a little bit. Trust Bill Murray. Bill Murray knows how to be Peter Venkman. He knows how to be in a Ghostbusters movie.
Just Bill Murray, we trust.
Yeah. Just let him go.
I guess the other funny thing I did see online not long after the movie release, and more people had seen it, and this is going to be really funny to us, I think, because we've said how many characters there are. But apparently people were upset that Dana Barrett and Lewis Tully weren't in this film, and kind of like, why were they not in this film? I'm like, what? There was 2 answers for you. One, which I think the directors come out and said, well, there was no story for them, so they didn't need to be there, which is correct. But 2, you've already got too many characters. How many more characters do you want in a movie? Like, unless Dana and Lewis had a legitimate reason to be there, and maybe the story was a little bit about them, it absolutely makes no sense to just bring them in. And I think they did the fan service thing a bit too much, or the nostalgia a bit too much anyway. So having them there would have just been like really, really dumb. They did it
in Afterlife. Dana Barrett had the tiniest part in Afterlife.
Yes,
I was like, okay, like that's nice, I guess, but you don't need to do that every movie.
No. And she did in the female Ghostbusters. She got a cameo as well in that. So
she did get a cameo. I think if you want to do something like that, if you want to do that fan service, because they did it so much in this movie by bringing everything back. In the next movie, just go, you know what? Fuck it. We're bringing back Zool. We're bringing back Gozar the Gozerian. And Lewis and Dana are going to be the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper again. You only need them on set for 2 days. Watch them get turned into the dogs. And then at the end, when they turn back into people. Yeah. And then you've got them back in. They're a part of the story. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's happening again. And you can make it a big thing where, like, you have a scene where Tully is just like, no, not again, please. And have him running through.
Who bought the dog?
Not again, come on. And then he gets turned into the dog. And like if you can, I'm not saying that that's the best storyline for the next movie. I'm saying if people want them back in, I think those characters are very specific to the plots of 1 and 2. Yeah. And unless you are going to make them central characters, you can't make them side characters. It's weird enough having Annie Potts be Winston. Is she Winston's assistant or something? Is that her role? They shoehorn something in so they can get her in a couple of scenes. It's weird enough having her kind of be there for no real reason other than so the audience can go, oh my God, it's Annie Potts. Oh, that's so cool. And that's it. That's really why she's there. So, with you got to pick a lane, I think, with these movies. You're following new characters. Okay, let's do it. Let's follow new characters. Don't then be like, and now also every other character from every movie ever. I kind of, what I secretly hope is that, and I thought I might do it with this one, I hope they follow the goddamn comic books, and I hope they do the crossover, and they bring the Ghostbusters from Ghostbusters. I just call it Ghostbusters Answer the Call, but Paul Feig's Ghostbusters, bring that, like, do a crossover.
A cross rip, where there's a
cross rip.
Which it's funny because that's another funny thing that they kind of talk about, like when the first movie happened and Zool got released, there was like they kind of inadvertently there was a bit of a cross rip, and we don't know what part of the universe has seeped into the other, or what the dimensions are. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea, but again, what it's taken 4 years for people to come across or whatever. I'm like, I don't know, like it's just. But then that's the thing. I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't hate it. Like if you have Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig and that come back, or somehow.
Yeah, Kate McKinnon was awesome.
Yeah.
Leslie Jones is huge. She's hosting the Daily Show now. Like they're all very famous still.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's cross them over and bulk out some goddamn female characters in this movie because they still.
Well, because we actually had that incident where Melissa McCarthy's character and Kristen Wiig's character kind of go into that other dimension and have to be pulled out. So it's kind of like they could have dipped their toes into another dimension there. I don't know. It's just another funny.
It's all there. It's all set.
Multiverses are a big thing these days, so it's plausible.
Are a big thing, and it allows you to set up stuff where you could, like, one of the Melissa McCarthy or Kate McKinnon, their character could stay in this Ghostbusters realm, but maybe like Phoebe and Gary cross over the other one and can't get back, and now you have a reason to have movies where you don't have everyone in one movie, but they're separate in different realities now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a movie about fighting ghosts. There are no rules. We can do whatever we want, guys. Let's think big.
So I guess in sort of wrapping up, I guess you're the more negative reviewer.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be, but I understand for the last hour and a bit, I have just been like, wah, wah, wah. But I was just, like I said, I think the way that I feel is this movie didn't have that heart and that like joy of like, freaking Ghostbusters, let's go. It was just like, here's a bunch of stuff. We don't know. What do you think? Is this all right? I don't know. The Ecto one's there. We good? Cool. Yeah. I think everyone was trying really hard. The script broke my heart.
Yeah. And look, I can't totally disagree. I do think I had fun with it, but I definitely think they need, like you said, maybe another, either go back a couple of drafts or go forward. That's probably a good analogy because I think it definitely needed a little bit more work putting characters together for this side plots and what have you. I think it was a bit all over the shop. And even just, some character motivations were a little bit like, oh, really? And then, like I said, like some characters just weren't given much to do at all. And you're kind of like, well, then why are they here? So, and just too many characters trying to be involved. And I did feel like I said, like I think that end bit at the Firehouse was so quickly done, but then also there was so many people in that room or in that building. And like I said, trying to keep place of everybody was just a bit of, all over the shop.
Just get the writers in a room and give them a big old bag of cocaine and let them go wild. And you watch. We're going to get a great Ghostbusters movie. Don't anybody act like that isn't how we got the first one. All right? Don't you do any revisionist history on me here. I know where the great.
Don't forget, they're supposed to be celebrating their golden years, so maybe golden years doesn't really. But anyway,
what better way to celebrate their golden years? You're like, all right, boys, one last hurrah. All right, I've got a great idea. And then off we go.
Well, I guess on that note, let's not forget, not all sequels suck.
Hey, sequel suck fans.
By definition alone, they're inferior films.
I almost remake